Before you play 7 Days to Die 1.0, you should watch this video. It contains 10 tips that will stop you from making some really embarrassing mistakes you might make in your first playthrough. Let's get into it. Tip number 1, the tutorial. The tutorial challenge in 7 Days to Die is actually something you should do every single time you play, even if you don't need it. That's because it gives you 4 skill points. For reference, you only get 1 skill point every time you level up, so when you do the tutorial challenge, you actually get 4 free levels of skill points to invest into whatever you want. For new players, by the way, I would recommend Strength. The club is powerful, shotguns are really good, mining is a really good way to get resources and XP, and it lets you build bases, which are a very easy way for new players to survive the Day 7 horde. Tip number 2, Trader Quests. The trader will give you a quest to do buried supplies missions, and that will give you a shovel. If you do this quest, you will get a free pipe gun. I would recommend you choose the pipe machine gun. It has the highest capacity and the best DPS out of the 4 pipe guns. More importantly, it'll unlock the real quests, and you want to do these tier 1 fetch, buried supplies and clear quests because they'll give you extra XP for stuff you should already be doing, and they'll make sure you go to POIs you're actually able to take on. Plus, they'll give you nice little rewards like ammo, meds, or building and crafting supplies. As you progress through the game, you'll unlock harder quests which will give you even more money and XP and generally better rewards. But there's also another benefit. Tip number 3, the tier 1 completion bonus. When you've done 10 of the highest level of quests available to you, you will complete the tier and unlock the next tier. On your first tier completion, you'll get a selection of rewards of varying usefulness, but it will always give you the option of a bicycle. And unless you desperately need anything else from this list, always take that bike. The bicycle lets you move faster, more stamina efficiently, which allows you to get more stuff done and outrun faster enemies. It also lets you move at full speed while over encumbered or while in heavy armor, so you can bring more stuff home, and it has an extra 9 inventory slots in the back, so you can really step up your looting with this item. Rush the bicycle. That's what I always do. Tip number 4, danger warnings. 7 Days to Die is actually more of a dungeon clearing RPG game these days than an actual survival game, and one of the biggest indicators of this is that all the POIs exist in different difficulty categories, and if you go to the wrong one at the start of the game, you'll find your playthrough containing a lot more deaths than was necessary. There's no real benefit to going into these harder POIs early on either, because the loot is based on your level, so while you do get a small boost to your loot from these harder locations, it's never worth the extra effort early on. So, how do you know which POIs are safe? Well, the skulls on the top right do have a meaning. 1 skull means tier 1, and that means you should basically be able to do them straight away with a wooden club and some primitive armor. 2 skulls are tier 2, and they're a little bit harder, but if you have some decent weapons, you should be okay pretty early on. 3 skulls are tier 3, which are a big step up in difficulty, but once you're comfortable with combat and have a decent melee weapon, like a baseball bat or something on that tier, you can very easily take those on. 4 skulls are tier 4, and these are another big step up in difficulty. You should really get yourself a real gun for these, or if you have more advanced strategies, why are you watching this video? But there are strategies you can use for tier 4s that won't require a gun. It's just what I would advise for new players, but with a gun you should be able to handle it very easily. And 5 skulls are the hardest naturally spawning POIs, tier 5s, and these have a very big variance in difficulty because they are few in number and they've been added over the course of the game's history, where the developers went through a lot of different design philosophies. The newer tier 5s are much easier than the older tier 5s, and these newer ones are not only easier, but they're usually shorter as well, and then the older ones are absolute slogs. They can take 1 or even 2 whole in-game days, maybe even 3 if it's your first time ever doing them. So generally, you're going to need some decent, at least mid-game equipment and spare meds and ammo for these. I'd highly recommend you take on the smaller ones where possible once you learn which ones are which from the quest browser. They're shorter, so you can get more of them done quicker and get to that good gear easier. Now, there are some other skulls you might see which are orange skulls. These are simply a biome difficulty modifier. So if you go to the wasteland and you get, I think, 3 orange skulls it is, the POIs there will be harder than in the forest. It does not mean you're getting into a tier 8 POI. I find it really annoying when people misinterpret the meaning of that. It just means that all the POIs are made harder by a modifier, and that doesn't make a tier 1 a tier 4. So stick with the locations you're able to take on for your current gear and skill level, and you should find yourself dying a whole lot less. Tip number 5, inventory tips. Your inventory can take a lot of time to manage if you don't learn how to use it. This button here will take all the items you have into the container you're looking at, and vice versa on the container. This button will take all the items you have and put them into the storage container if the container already has started stacks of those items, leaving everything else behind in your inventory. Double clicking it will let it make new stacks of existing items in the container. And the middle button will just organize your inventory, I think alphabetically. I've actually never even thought about that until right now. I don't know how it sorts it. You can also lock slots in the inventory by using the lock icon and clicking on the slots you want to lock. Doing this will stop any of the other inventory buttons from affecting that slot, which means you can put ammo, meds, your basic crafting items into your backpack, lock the slots, and then freely use the inventory shortcuts without accidentally getting rid of your vital items and forgetting to pick them up before you leave, finding yourself with no ammo when you get to your location. Tip number 6, combat tips. Aim for the head. If you're not aiming for the head, you're gonna waste so much stamina and ammo, and I don't want to hear any excuses about like, oh, I can't aim for the head because I'm on controller. I'm afraid that is a skill issue. You can aim for the head with a controller, just do it. If you can't reliably hit headshots yet, do not even think about going above warrior difficulty, because you'll just use all your stamina and ammo on like one zombie. Headshots not only do more damage, but they also have a unique benefit when combined with the dismemberment mechanic. Every time you attack an enemy's limbs, they have a chance for that limb to be cut off or blown off in some cases, and you can increase that by doing more damage as well. And some weapons have unique modifiers that make them more capable of dismemberment. If you dismember an enemy's head, you instantly kill them. So, aiming for the head not only kills enemies faster in general, it'll occasionally give you instant kills on enemies, saving you lots of stamina and ammo. Also, get good at moving backwards, because standing still in this game is the biggest mistake I see new players making, aside from aiming at people's crotches instead of their heads. Standing still in this game will just cost you all your food and meds, if not several deaths. Keep moving, preferably backwards, so they don't hit you. Tip number 7 is all about using the crafting stations. The campfire needs fuel and to be turned on before you can cook anything on it. The forge works the same way in terms of fuel. If you want to craft anything though, you need to put resources like iron or clay in the smelting cells on the right and let those smelt down. Once they do, you can use them to actually craft at the forge. The anvil speeds up the crafting speed, the bellows speed up the smelting speed, and crucibles are needed to make anything steel. The workbench is extremely simple, you just open it and press craft. Chemistry station also needs fuel like the campfire. And as a little extra tip, just in case you already knew how to use those, you might not know this. If you place a workstation incorrectly, you can place down a land claim block and then hold E or whatever your select button is on the station and then select pick up. You'll have to empty the forge entirely though to do that, which can be really annoying as it wastes all that time you used to smelt. But if you need to do it, you need to do it. Certainly saves you breaking the forge and having to build a new one. Tip number 8. Building for XP versus building quickly. Building is a big part of 7 Days to Die for a lot of people, but you have to make a choice. Do you want to build quickly, or do you want to maximize the amount of XP you get from building? If you want XP, then you want to gather all the wood, cobblestone, concrete, and steel, or whatever tier up you want to go to, that you want to use, and then upgrade each block painstakingly through each tier to get all that juicy XP out of it, as well as the extra XP you'll get from collecting the resources. However, if you just want to build something quickly, just build the blocks of the tier you want in your inventory and then place them down directly. It saves a lot of time as you don't need the previous resource tiers or any time upgrading. With a little asterisk, of course, if you're not good at placing the blocks, you might waste a bunch of time breaking the ones you misplaced. In that case, it's another one of those skill issues, because just take your time and make sure you're placing the block where you want to place the block. Tip number 9 is all about healing injuries. Injuries occur in 7 Days to Die primarily when you take a critical hit from an enemy or a few other generally self-inflicted instances. These are more severe injuries which will reduce your maximum health and often have other detrimental effects as well. You'll need more than just some soup to heal these. Concussions occasionally occur when you receive a stun, and they reduce your attributes by 1 and can be cured instantly with painkillers. Abrasions occur very commonly as critical injuries and can vary in severity from as low as 10 minutes up to a maximum of 2 hours. These just reduce your maximum health, and you can use aloe cream to speed them up a little bit, or first aid bandages even more, or first aid kits will heal them at the absolute fastest. I think it's 400% faster with the first aid kit. Sometimes when you get abrasions, you'll also get bleed, which lasts 20 seconds and drains your health for that amount of time. I believe the amount of health it drains is actually based on difficulty, but it's been a while since I checked that, so don't take my word for it. You can use bandages, first aid bandages, or first aid kits to close the wound early though. Alternatively, you might get a deep laceration. Deep lacerations also come with bleeding, but also make you more likely to receive another bleeding injury again. You can fix these with sewing kits or first aid kits, both of which will stop the bleeding as well. Infections are effects that you get that will kill you in 7 days if left untreated. It's like the title. They have increasingly debilitating effects as the infection gets worse, and you can reduce it by 5% with honey, which you find in tree stumps. If the infection hits 0%, it's cured. Alternatively, you can use herbal antibiotics which cure 10% or regular antibiotics which cure 25%. Fatigue makes you more vulnerable to damage from hits and can be cured instantly with vitamins. Broken arms and legs are pretty much the worst injuries you can get and will make you take damage when you attack or sprint or jump, respectively, with broken legs also slowing you down. You can use a splint to reduce the time it takes to heal, or even better, you can use a cast, which will work faster. You can use steroids to mute the damage you take when you attack and sprint. Sprained arms and legs cannot be cured conventionally by most players, but they only last 10 minutes. They're the same as broken limbs basically, but last a shorter time, and you can't speed them up. However, if you have Physician rank 1, you can use a splint or a cast to cure the sprain instantly. I think that's all the injuries I can think of. There is the one where you eat the glass, but basically that depends on the difficulty you're on. On some difficulties you can out-heal it with like first aid kits. On some difficulties, eating broken glass is a guaranteed death. Tip number 10 is a very simple one, a very short one, but perks equal loot. Perks you take in the game will affect the loot you find in containers, from finding more clubs with the club's perk, or finding more club magazines and club crafting components. This can be good or bad, so make sure you're only taking the perks for things you're actually going to want to get in loot. And that's it. 10 tips you should know before you play. Now get in there and die a few hundred more times. Special thanks to my members and patrons for continuing to support the channel, and thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.